September 2nd, 2003. By this time, the 9/11 Commission had convened, and Berger was most interested in the highly classified Millennium Alert After Action Review. As we told you, it was drafted by White House terrorism czar Richard Clarke after an alert customs agent in Washington state thwarted the terror attack planned for Los Angeles on January 1st, 2000. Former U.S. Attorney Andrew McCarthy, the lead prosecutor in the first World Trade Center bombings.
We know that the Millennium After Action Review was a scathing attack of what the performance of the administration had been in the run-up to the Millennium, that we only stopped it by luck.
Several drafts of the report, with comments from White House staff attached, existed in the files presented to Berger. That day, Berger made more requests that Smith step out of her office. He was also making frequent trips to the bathroom and sending Smith's staff on errands.
He had to make a phone call. He had to take a phone call. He was thirsty. So he asked one of the staff members to get him a Diet Coke, and that employee went to get him that drink.
When that staff member, named John Laster, returned with Berger's soda, he witnessed the notorious sock stuffing incident. Laster dashed off an email to his boss, Nancy Smith.
The archives staff member says, "Okay, I know this is odd. When I opened the door and started down the hall, he was stooped over right outside the doorway. He was fiddling with something white, which looked to be a piece of paper or multiple pieces of paper. It appeared to be rolled around his ankle and underneath his pant leg. We did not make eye contact. I can't be 100% sure of what I saw because it happened so quickly, but there was clearly something there more than his pants and his socks." Now I'm laughing, perhaps I shouldn't, because this is highly classified information we're talking about, but it almost sounds like a joke.
But it's true.
Berger says the notion that he stuffed documents in his socks is, quote, absurd and embarrassing.
That he has socks that keep falling down and he was just pulling his socks up.
I know when my socks fall down, although I like to think that they don't. I don't think anybody could think they saw paper down my pants leg.
But whether in his socks or elsewhere, Berger does now admit he did indeed smuggle the highly classified Millennium After Action Review out of the archives that night, and some of his classified notes as well. Did he take more than that? Once again, we may never know, because Smith didn't confront Berger or call Brockfeld.
Obviously, had we been notified on the third visit, Mr. Berger may have spent the night in jail on his fourth visit. It may well have been on the front page of papers from coast to coast.
Instead, Smith and her staff concocted their own plan for his fourth visit. An amateurish sting that would catch Berger in the act, but utterly compromise the case against.
We told you how Sandy Berger removed top-secret terror-related documents on at least 2 visits to the National Archives. His crimes were unprecedented for a former national security advisor to the President of the United States. Berger knew he was risking a long prison term if he got caught, and he did it at a time when the country's confidence in our national intelligence and in our government's ability to rise above the partisanship in the war against terror was badly shaken. Later, we're going to look at why Berger would take such a risk. But first, Berger's national security crimes were about to become even more flagrant.
In the fall of 2003, Berger was near the end of his top-secret document review for the 9/11 Commission, and a crisis was coming. Berger had been stealing top-secret documents, and National Archive employees were onto him. On October 2nd, 2003, his 4th trip to the archives, the staff of Presidential Materials Director Nancy Smith had dreamed up a sting to catch him.
But is that their role, to be law enforcement? To set up a sting?
Clearly, I think not.
Paul Brockfeld is the Inspector General of the National Archives. He was the one Smith should have called to try to catch Berger. She didn't.
It was very damaging to the investigation and later prosecution of Mr. Berger.
As we told you, many of the top-secret files Berger was reviewing were not numbered. But on this day, Smith penciled a number on the back of each page he gave to Berger.
During that day, Mr. Berger acted in a manner that they'd been accustomed to now. Frequent visits to the men's room, frequent phone calls, frequently asking the other person in the room to leave the room and leave him alone.
And when Berger was left alone, he hid one of the documents, which Smith numbered 217, under his briefcase. It was yet another version of the Millennium Alert After Action Review. Berger had stolen a different version on his last trip. During one of Berger's bathroom breaks, Smith determined document 217 was gone. Again, she should have called in Brockfeld. Instead, as a congressional report would later describe it, Smith and her staff started second-guessing themselves. They convinced themselves they might have made a mistake, and number 217 never existed.
You have the former National Security Advisor, and nobody could believe that he was taking documents.